In this video, I'll be going over how to set up some basic animations to your weapon system character in Unreal Engine 5. This video is part of my weapon system tutorial series, where previously I showed you how to make your character pick up and equip different weapons. In this video, I'll be building on top of this system, so if you haven't seen it, I will link it on the screen now and also in the video description. Before we start, there's a few animations we need to download from Mixamo. The first one we need is a simple idle animation, which will be used for when the character is standing still. So select this one, then click download. We already have the character mesh in our project, so we can leave this set to without skin, then we can just click download. Next we need a walking animation for when the character is moving. Select this one, then tick in place so the animation remains at the root position. Click download, then leave it without skin and then click download again. We already have a rifle idle animation in our project, but now I'm going to download a pistol idle animation, which we'll be able to use for secondary weapons. We only need the idle animations for holding the rifle and pistol, as we're going to blend them with the basic walking and idle animations. Now that you have those three animations downloaded, open up your weapon system project. We'll start by making a new folder for our animations. So open up the content browser, then right click and select new folder. Name this animation. Next, inside of this folder, right click and add another folder. Call this animation sequences. Open it, then click import. Select all three of the Mixamo animations, then click open. Next, go to the skeleton drop-down and select the skeleton we're using for our character. Then just click import all. I'm also going to quickly move our rifle animation to this folder to keep things organised. I'm also going to rename all of these to make them easier to identify when setting up our animation system. Next we're going to set up a blend space, which we can use to blend between an idle and walking animation depending on the player's speed. I'll quickly create a new folder for this, which I'll call Blend Spaces. Open it, then right click and go to Animation, then select Blend Space. Then select our character skeleton. Name this BS_movement. Open it, then go over to the horizontal axis and change the name to speed. We want to set the maximum axis value to our player's maximum walk speed. To find this, open the content browser and locate your player character blueprint. Open it, then select character movement and go over to the details panel. Here search for max walk speed. As you can see, by default mine is set to 500. So this is the maximum value I'm going to use in my blend space. So go back to the blend space and set the maximum axis value to be the same as your max walk speed. Next you want to drag your idle animation to the bottom left corner of the graph. This is the point where the player's speed is equal to 0. Next you want to drag your walking animation into the bottom right of the graph, where the player is moving at their maximum speed. If you hold Ctrl then move your mouse across the graph, you can see how the animations blend into each other depending on the player's speed. Now we're going to move on to creating an animation blueprint for our character. This basically controls what animation should be shown on the character at any given time. So save this, then go back to the content browser. Here we're going to right click and add a new folder, which we'll call Animation Blueprints. Open it, then right click and go to Animation, then select Animation Blueprint. Select your skeleton, then click Create. Name this ABP_player character. Open it, then go straight to the event graph. Here we're going to get a reference to our player character so that we can access their speed. So separate these nodes, then right click and search for an event begin play. Next drag off this return value and search for a cast to our third person character. Connect it to the begin play, then right click on this pin and promote it to a variable. Name this player character reference. Next drag this variable into the graph and get it. Drag off it and search for an isValid. This node is used to make sure that our character actually exists. So connect it to the update animation event. Next, drag off the player character reference again and search for the get character movement. Next, drag off this and search for a get velocity. Drag off one more time and search for a vector length xy. This converts the player's velocity into their speed. Right-click on the return value and promote it to a variable. Name this speed. Then connect it to the isValid pin. Next, we're going to set up the animation, so go to the animation graph. In some space, right-click and search for a state machine. This is going to contain our basic movement animations, so name it movement state. Then connect it to the output pose. Double-click to open it, then drag off the entry and add a state. This will contain our movement blend space, so I'm going to name it idle/walk. Double-click to open it, then drag in our movement blend space. Connect it to the output animation pose. Next, drag in the speed variable and get it. Then connect it to the speed pin on the movement blend space. Now our blend space will constantly receive the player's speed, telling it if the animation should be idle, walking, or somewhere in between. Now we're going to make it so that our character uses this animation blueprint, so just compile and save, then go back to the third person character. Select the character mesh, then in the details panel go to animation mode and set it to use animation blueprint. Then set the anim class to our new animation blueprint. If you compile and save, then go back to the viewport and press play, you will see that we now have some working movement animations. This works for when the player has not yet equipped a weapon. However, we want to make it so that when they pick one up, the upper half of their body uses a holding gun animation. To do this, we first need to go back to the player character and add a new variable. We're going to name this isHoldingWeapon. This variable will initially be set to false, but when they pick up a gun, it will be changed to true. So go to the end of our spawn weapon event and drag in the variable and set it. Set this to true, then connect it to the attach actor to component node. Now we need to access this variable in our animation blueprint, so that we know whether to show the holding gun animation. So open the animation blueprint, then go to the event graph. Here we want to drag off the player character reference and search for the getIsHoldingWeapon variable. Then we want to right-click on the pin and promote it to a variable. I'm just going to remove the spaces in the name to keep things consistent, then just connect it up. Next, we're going to work on the system which will allow us to show the holding weapon animation only on the upper body, while maintaining the basic walking and idle animations on the character's legs. So first go to the animation graph. We want to disconnect our movement state machine and move it into some space. Next, drag off it and search for a new save cached pose. This node stores an animation result once so that you can reuse it across the graph without having to recalculate it. Name this movement cache. Next, come down and right-click and search for a blend poses by bool. This node allows us to smoothly switch between two animation poses based on whether a boolean value is true or false. So in this case, we're going to drag in our isHoldingWeapon variable, then click get, and then connect it to the active value. If this variable is true and the player is holding a weapon, we want to show our rifle animation. So drag it into the graph and connect it to the true pose. If the variable is false and we are not holding a weapon, we want to set the animation to just be our basic movement. So we can just right click and search for a used cached pose for our movement cache. Then connect it to the false pose. Now we need to make it so that our rifle animation only shows on the top half of the body. For this, we're going to right click and add a layered blend per bone. This node allows you to combine multiple animations by assigning them different bones. For the base pose, we're just going to use the movement cache, so you can just copy and paste it from here. Then connect it to the base pose pin. Then for the blend poses 0, we just want to connect it to the blend poses by bool. Next, we need to set the bone that we want our rifle animation to play from. To do this, select the Layered Blend per Bone node, then in the Details panel, expand these, then click the Add Element button. We want the animation to play upwards from the lowest spine bone, so we need to type its exact name in here. To find its exact name, click this button to open the skeleton. Then on the left, look for the spine bones and try to find out which one is the lowest down. As you can see, mine is just called spine with a capital S, so I'm going to go back to the animation blueprint and type it into the socket name exactly the same. Next, we can just connect it to the output, then compile and save, then go back to the viewport and press play. If you go over to a weapon and pick it up, you will see that our rifle animation is now showing on the top half of the body, while the legs still show our walking animation. You may notice though now that our gun is no longer pointing forward like it did before. We can quickly fix this by going back to the animation blueprint, then selecting the Layered Blend per Bone node, and enabling Mesh Space Rotation. If you compile and save, then go back to the viewport and press play, you will see that this is now fixed and our player's gun is pointing directly in front of the character. Next, we're going to make it so that we can use different animations for different weapon types. Because at the moment we have an upper body animation that holds rifles perfectly, but what if we want to hold something like a pistol or an SMG, which are quite small and would require an animation where the hands are a lot closer together? For this, we're going to use the pistol animation we downloaded off Mixamo. But first, we need to start by creating a new gun blueprint. So open the content browser and go to the weapons folder. I'm going to create an SMG because the weapons bundle we downloaded in the last video has a mesh for one. In a future video, I'm going to make this SMG fully automatic, so I'm going to right click on the base full auto weapon, then click Create Child Blueprint Class. This weapon blueprint will now inherit all the functionality from the base full auto weapon. I'm going to name this BP_base full auto SMG. Then just open it. Here we want to select our gun mesh, then in the details panel replace it with our SMG skeletal mesh. This is all we need to do at the moment, so now we can go on to creating the pickup for this weapon. So compile and save, then go to the content browser and open the weapon pickups folder. Here we want to right click and create a child of the base weapon blueprint. I'm going to name this BP_full auto SMG pickup. Then we can just open it, and again we want to replace the mesh with the SMG skeletal mesh. Next we want to go to class defaults so we can set the weapon variable to our SMG weapon blueprint. Now we can compile and save, then go back to the weapon blueprint, where again we'll go to class defaults, then set the weapon pickup variable to the SMG pickup blueprint. Now compile and save, then go back to the viewport. To test this out, open the content browser and drag the SMG pickup into the level. If we press play, you'll see that we're able to pick up the SMG. However, due to the animation we're using, it doesn't fit properly in the player's hands. We need to make it so the type of weapon picked up determines which animation we're going to use. So to do this, we're going to use an enum. Enum is short for enumeration, and it basically lets you define a set of name values, making code easier to read and manage. So to set this up, we're first going to go to the content browser, open the blueprints folder, then right click and add a new folder. Call this enums. Open it. Next, right click and go to blueprint, then select enumeration. Name this enum_weapon type. Open this. We're going to press this button twice to add two enumerators, as we currently only have two different weapon types in our game. So for the first one, I'm going to name it rifle, and for the second one, I could either name it SMG or pistol, but I'm going to go with pistol as that's what the animation originally was. Now we can just save and close this. Next, we want to add this as a variable to our weapon blueprints. So go to the content browser and open the base weapon blueprint. Then click the Add Variable button and call it Weapon Type Enum. Then set it to our enum weapon type. Now we can compile and save, then go back to the content browser and open up one of our rifles. you want to make sure that our weapon type enum variable is set to rifle. Then we're just going to check that our other rifle blueprint is set correctly. Now we can go into our SMG weapon blueprint. Then under class defaults we want to make sure that the weapon type is set to pistol. Now we can compile and save and close all these tabs. Now we want to go back to our character blueprint, where we're going to make it so when the player picks up a gun, the weapon type from the enum is stored as a variable and passed through to the animation blueprint. To do this, we need to drag off this current weapon variable, so we can actually just drag off this reroute node and search for the get weapon type enum. Next we want to right click and promote this to a variable, and I'm going to quickly just remove the spaces. Next we want to connect this right at the end after the set is holding weapon. Next, compile and save this, then go back to the content browser and open up the animation blueprint. Go to the event graph, then drag off the player character reference and search for the get weapon type enum. Then again right click and promote it to a variable. Then just remove the spaces. Then just connect it up. Next we're going to set up the functionality that switches between the two weapons animations depending on which weapon type is being held. So open up the animation graph, then we want to delete this rifle animation. Next, in some space, drag in the weapon type enum variable. Click get, then drag off it and search for a blend poses for the weapon type enum. This works similar to the blend poses by bool node. However, it switches between animations depending on which enum is set, rather than if a boolean is true or false. We need to add the pins for each enum option, so right click on the node, then click rifle. Then right click again and click pistol. This has added 2 pins to the node which we can plug our animations into. For the default pose, we just want this to be our base character movement, so we can just copy and paste the movement cache, then connect it to the default pose. Next, drag in your rifle idle animation and connect it to the rifle pose. Next we can drag in the pistol idle animation and connect that to the pistol pose. Finally we can just connect this to the true pose on the blend poses by bool. Now we can test this, so compile and save, then go back to the viewport and press play. If you pick up a rifle, the player will still use the rifle animation. However, if you go to pick up the SMG, the animation will switch over to the pistol animation. If you're holding the SMG, you might notice that it doesn't quite fit properly in the player's hands. This is because we're using the rifle socket to attach it to the player. So next we need to add a new socket to the player's skeleton and set up a system which selects which socket to attach the weapon to. So first let's open the character skeleton. To easily get to this, open the player character, then select the mesh. Then click the Browse to Asset button next to the skeletal mesh asset. Open it, then click this button to open the skeleton. Next, go over to the preview animation and select the pistol idle animation. Next we want to get rid of the rifle preview asset. So find the rifle socket, right click on it, then click remove all attached assets. Next we want to right click on the right hand bone. Then click add socket. I'm going to name this pistol_socket. Next, to help with positioning this socket, I'm going to right click on it, then click add preview asset. Then look for the SMG skeletal mesh. Next you want to move and rotate the socket until the gun fits perfectly in the player's hands. Using the different perspectives can help with this. Once you're happy with its position, click save, then go to the player character. Here we're going to make it so when we pick up a weapon, the weapon type enum is checked, and depending on what type the weapon is, it'll be attached to the corresponding socket. So start by dragging off this reroute node for the enum, then search for the switch on enum weapon type. This node allows us to switch between 2 different outcomes depending on what the weapon type is. Next we want to select the attach actor to component and mesh nodes, then cut them. We can then connect these up and then move these a bit closer. Next we want to paste those nodes after the switch and connect it to the rifle pin. Next we want to drag in the current weapon variable and get it, then connect that to the target pin. As this is coming off the rifle pin on the switch, we can leave this as the rifle socket. Next we want to copy this, then paste it below. Connect it to the pistol pin on the switch. Then we need to change the socket name to pistol_socket. Now if we compile and save, then go back to the viewport and press play, both weapons should fit perfectly in the player's hands and you should now have a basic animation system for your character. In the next video, I'll be going over how to shoot guns so that we can deal damage to enemies. I'll be setting up semi-auto, full auto, as well as burst fire for multiple guns. So subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when that video comes out. If you would like any personal help with your Unreal Engine projects, make sure to check out my Patreon. Thank you so much for watching.